Hi, my name is Rob Gardella, and I'm here right now to walk you through my instructional design project. The focus on this project was grammar and parts of speech, and even more focused on using nouns. So let's go ahead and start up. My project proposal was really focusing on the fact that many of my students just plain aren't that good at writing. Their standardized test scores are pretty low, and that's just across the board for our school. The biggest issue that I see with this is the fact that my students don't get that good of a formal grammar or writing training. Usually it's mixed in with the English classes, and it just kind of sits off to the side when compared to literature. So the big focus that I wanted to put on here was not only to create a grammar unit, but really create something that I could actually extend more into a class, with the ultimate goal of this becoming a separate class from the regular English 9 course, but still be mandatory for my ninth graders. When I started looking at the issues behind the poor writing at my school, and I started looking at it through the ADDIE model, I noticed the reasons behind it. I noticed the real problems start at home. Most of my students, they don't speak English at home. A lot of them speak Spanish. And because of this, many of my students don't get the practice at home, and they don't have the help from their parents at home. Now, it's not to say that that's the only reason why. I still believe that the education behind it is one of the main issues, but it definitely is part of the reason. Although many of my students have poor grammar skills, they have big dreams. They want to go to college, they want to better themselves. And honestly, I keep telling them every year the best way to do that is to become really good at grammar and writing. Now, many times when my students hear this, they start laughing. They think that's funny. But in actuality, when they get to their senior year, when they come back and visit from college, I always get a couple students saying, you know what, Mr. Gardella, you were completely right. It's very important to be able to write properly. And it takes a while, but they see that and they understand that. Unfortunately, it's usually too late. This is the reason why I really want to focus on grammar and focus on how grammar plays into writing, because I know how important it is for them. And although they may not see it now, they will definitely appreciate it years later. Now, when coming up with my needs analysis, I really had to focus on what were the most important things that my students needed to know. And first off, they need the practice. They need to be able to practice over and over and over again how to use the different parts of grammar, the different parts of speech. And because of that, I definitely implemented that into the unit. And if you look at the unit, you can see that there's a lot of practice. Practice in class, out of class. It's just something that they would have to get used to. Just continue to use those skills. But learning and using those skills out of context is pretty much useless. My students need to be able to write properly. That's the main goal. That's what I'm trying to get to. So, one of the biggest things that I focused on was being able to take those skills that they learned and put them into a real world setting. So, writing a paper. So, these papers aren't going to be like a term paper, it's not going to be something that's really demanding. But what they are going to require is that the student uses the skills that they have just learned. They use a certain part of speech in its proper form. And by doing that, they show me that they have truly mastered the material. After working on the needs analysis, the next step was to focus on the objectives. Now, the objectives, I had objectives for myself, I had objectives for my students. The objective for my students mainly were to be able to define and recognize the various parts of speech, along with being able to use them properly. to be able to use online learning tools like Study Island. Study Island is something that I decided I was going to use in this unit and have it as a like an everyday part of the class. Also, they needed to be able to write a short essay based on the skills learned, and that's what we just talked about in that last slide. So the big objective for my students was that they should be able to raise their writing scores based off of the 6+1 traits of writing. uh, they need to be at least a 3 out of 5. Now, if you're familiar with the 6+1 traits, you know that it goes along a holistic scale. So a 5 is the best you can do, a 1 is the worst you can do, a 3, that's about average. To be able to bring my ninth graders up to that, that would be the main goal, to try to at least get a 3 out of 5. If they got a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5, hey, that's even better. But the main goal is to get every student at a 3 out of 5. Once I had the objectives figured out, the next step was to design and develop the entire unit. Now, because we had to create 10 hours worth of work, it would be perfect to do in 10 school days. The first day is going to focus on how to use Chromebooks. Like I said, Study Island is going to be a big part of the class, and because of that, I want to be able to ensure that all of my students use it and use it properly. Now, my school was given a good amount of Chromebooks recently, and let's just say I love using them, but that's a completely different story. So we would take those Chromebooks and bring them into the classroom and show the students how to first off log into the Chromebooks and then also log into Study Island. Once my students are able to log in and navigate Study Island, then they'll be able to do different types of assignments on there. Study Island is something that's pretty amazing if you haven't used it before, but you can actually set up individualized work for each student. And you could see how the students are progressing, which students have mastered different skills, and which ones might need more work on that. And it's definitely a great way to track your kids and see who's progressing, who's not, and what to do to help every student along the way. Now, days 2 through 8 are going to focus on learning different types of nouns. Like I said earlier, although this is a large grammar unit, for the sake of it being 10 days, I focused specifically on nouns. Now, my unit will be something that can easily be repeatable and just drop in different parts of speech aside from nouns and do the exact same things. But for the sake of this project, it was all focusing on nouns. So days 2 through 8 are extremely structured. Every day the students are going to come in, they're going to work on some bell work, and then they're going to first learn about the new type of noun that we'll talk about. Then we're going to work on it as a group, and finally it'll get to them working on different handouts or even working on Study Island to get the full knowledge of the different types of nouns. The ninth day is going to be a noun scavenger hunt. So after they learn the various categories of nouns, they're actually going to go around the school and find different nouns that fit that category. They have to find 10 different nouns for each one. It might sound like a lot, but it's something that can be done fairly quickly and definitely within an hour's time. The last day, day 10, we get to use the Chromebooks again. For this, we're going to type an in-class essay using the Chromebooks and then submitting them through Google Drive. The last part was the evaluation. Now, plenty of evaluations go through this unit. The formative evaluations are going to be something that I can actually track on Study Island, so I can see how the students are progressing. I can see which students definitely need a bit more help or a bit more work, or which students are progressing faster than others. And it's something that I can take that raw data and see how I can change my class and change the pacing or change how much material is being used in order to make that a better course. The summative evaluation is going to be that short essay, and that's just going to show straight mastery of the skills that were learned. Speaking of lessons learned, I learned quite a lot along the way. The first thing I learned was that the ADDIE model is far more in depth than what I thought it would ever be. Uh, Whenever I would create a lesson, sure, I would look at the end goal and I would design from there, but I would never take into account certain things. Analyzing a population or even just assessing my needs are something that I pretty much never did. And when it comes to evaluation for how well I feel that a course did or how a lesson would do, uh, I wouldn't really do that until the following year, and that would be a pretty hazy memory. So usually I would just kind of fall into what I did the year previous. Uh, Looking at this now, that was completely the wrong way to go. Uh, Trying to figure out how to use the ADDIE model was a little difficult at first, but after reading that book and going through and listening to the weekly videos and reading everybody's comments, I definitely started to get a hang of it. The final hoop that I needed to jump was figuring out how to design a lesson that could be repeatable, something that I could do over and over again, and it's just a drag and drop kind of method into figuring out what the big focus is, whether it's nouns or it's verbs or it's adjectives. Once I got that down, I really feel that I started to make some good progress into this unit. So that's my project. Thank you for watching and listening to my ramblings. If you have any comments, please leave them on the instructor site. Thank you.